Do you feel like with every painting that you're reinventing your approach to composition, how you solve problems, how you organize the space? Well, I'm going to share with you 3 tips that can help you move through compositional blocks and issues so that your paintings are more like what you'd like them to be. Hey everyone, welcome to Whole Artist Mastery. I'm Marianne Mitchell. So I've been at this professional artist thing for a long time. And at this point in my life, what gives me truly the greatest pleasure is to share all of my expertise and knowledge with you to help you grow as a whole artist. So if you like what you see, you can help the Whole Artist Mastery YouTube channel grow by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Thank you so much. Okay, the first tip that I'm going to share with you has to do with the size of your substrate and the shape of your substrate. So what do I mean by substrate? Well, that means you're either painting on canvas or board or aluminum or paper or wax paper, mylar, whatever substrate you like to paint on. That is your substrate. So I have discovered over the years, both my own journey as an artist as well as working with so many mentorship artists, that the actual size, whether it's small, medium, and large, really speaks to how your inner voice shows up, as well as the shape. So what I mean by that is, for some people, painting on squares like I do is really a challenge. For some people, painting on rectangles is really a challenge. For me, rectangular shapes and different ratio rectangles are much more difficult than painting on a square format. Now, why is this? Well, in my case, I find, particularly with the 16 by 20 size panel, I paint on wood panel, I end up always breaking the rectangle, if it's horizontal or even if it's vertical, in half. And I have trouble figuring out how to get beyond those 2 halves. You know, what to do at the top, what to do at the bottom, how can I bring them together so that they're different but they talk to each other, which for some weird reason I find completely absent, those particular struggles of how do I get the top and the bottom and the right and the left to all talk to each other. I can do much more effectively in the square format. For some people, it's the complete opposite. They find the square really challenging, that they need the expanse of a rectangle. Or in some cases, there are people who like the 16 by 20, which is the most challenging rectangle for me. For some people, the vertical format is the best format for speaking to how they naturally compose. For some people, it's horizontal. Now, again, in my case, years ago, I was painting in rectangles, but I was painting large, well, relatively speaking, compared to what I'm doing now, which is 24 square. But these were 40 by 60. And there's something about that ratio of a rectangle that I was able to compose more effectively. So the other aspect of shape and size is size. So I'm working with this one mentorship artist who currently has some physical challenges which make it very difficult for her to stand for any length of time, much less walk for very far. She has found an easel that she can sit at and put large canvases, which in her case is large, is 36 by 48 or 36 square. She also enjoys squares and finds that working large allows her to really expand and to go traveling within her own voice. And we actually had a conversation about this the other day. I was postulating that maybe this was because she needed to work large because she was confined to her small living space unable to walk easily or even stand, and that this was her way of experiencing that expansiveness, which is inherently part of her personality, and go traveling in the canvas. And that's much easier to do when the canvas is large. Conversely, I'm working with somebody who is working in a very small format, like 5 by 7, and she's finding that format really generative in terms of the search that she's on to figure out what her voice is. And the small format allows her to experiment or to be more detail oriented. And she's a more detail oriented person, as I'm thinking this through, than the first person I was mentioning, who's very big picture, very broad, expansive thinker. And the second person is as well, but she gets more involved in the minute details, which, if that is who you are as a person and as a painter, then the small format really helps to, or really speaks to, that detail-oriented way of approaching things. In my case, again, I am currently working on 24 squares for lots of reasons, traveling, size of space that I'm working in, but also I'm finding this balance between the fine detail that I put into my work and the expansive color and meaning is really, really much more effective in this size than a 36-inch square. So as you're hearing me talk about this, think about, are there certain shapes, rectangular or square, that you find more difficult to compose? And what happens is that when you hit upon the shape that works for you, you find that you're struggling a lot less to figure out how to make a composition work, because that size speaks to how you inherently think. And you can actually make more interesting compositions when you have a set size. The last thing I want to say is about having exhibitions and being in galleries. And in the exhibition world, it's really important to have a uniform, consistent presentation. So if you're showing in galleries or wanting to show in galleries, really pay attention to choosing, if you're a square person, choosing 2 size squares. If you're a rectangle person, choosing 1 rectangle or 2 rectangles. But if you have 3 different squares and 3 different kinds of rectangles in a show, it's much more disjointed. And galleries really appreciate having that consistent size presentation on a wall. Okay, so the second tip for making compositions that really speak to you has to do with the 5 elements of visual language: line, color, shape, value, and texture. But this is a little bit of a different approach, because what I have found is that each of us seem to be drawn to 1, 2, or 3 of the 5 more strongly than others. So one way that you can figure this out is by going to the Whole Artist Mastery website, sign up for the mailing list, and get the Whole Artist Mastery Intro Guide, where you will find the treasure hunt, the personal treasure hunt. And what this personal treasure hunt does is that it helps you see how you move through the world, how you feel, how you think, and then helps you draw that to the 5 elements of visual language. So here are a couple of examples. I worked with somebody who was very verbal, so her answers to a lot of these questions would go on and on and on and on and on, and I would be like, okay. And then this little bell went off. I said, oh, her work was all lines. And she was, really struggling with the fact that previously people had told her, you need more color, you need more shape, you need more value. And her work was mostly just line. I said, well, the reason is because you're a line person, because of the way you talk. You go on and on and on, and it's like a line traveling around. What she said was always quite interesting, but it was like, this circuitous kind of way of arriving at a point, which is exactly what her work looked like. So, if you think about what you're most interested in including in your compositions, for me, it's color. It's color and shape, and then line and value and texture. So, all 5 of these things are present in my work, as they are for most of us. But what I really want you to hear is, rather than getting stuck up on, oh, well, I'm supposed to have, a particular structure of values. I'm supposed to have small, medium, and large shapes. I'm supposed to have a balance of line along with shape. And I have to have complementary colors and colors that work. Well, that's all true, except that there are ways to, or that's all true. And it can be restricting if you find, as numbers of people that I've worked with, that, they come to me and they say, well, I've been told I'm supposed to have shapes. I don't like shapes. Or, as this person I just mentioned, I've been told I need more color, I need more shape, I need more value to make the composition work, except that she was really a line person. So your compositional structure is strongest when you know which of the 5 elements you're most drawn to. And for some people, it's an equal distribution of line, color, shape, value, and texture. But I want you to go get the personal treasure hunt and the introductory guide and go through it yourself and see what you discover. Do you see shapes in your answers? Do you see more color? Are you more of a line person? Think about how you talk. What gets you most excited? What's awe-inspiring for you? Because within the answers to those ponderings lies your compositional, I guess you would say, playbook. I really invite you to think about this yourself. So the last tip I'm going to share with you has to do with the tools that you use to create your paintings, because the tools that you use are an integral part of making line, color, shape, value, and texture work for you. So I'm going to show you a couple of paintings that I've made over the last couple of years to illustrate how I'm using different tools to support my compositional structures. So the first painting that you see is Winter House. And so this painting was primarily constructed with the squeegee. So I have 3 different sizes here. This is 5-inch, 4-inch, or 6-inch, 5-inch, and 4-inch. And a shout out to the Cold Wax Academy, because this is where you can purchase this particular squeegee, which I actually like best. You can also find somewhat of an equivalent on Amazon. It's called a bowl scraper. So anyway, what I do is I put the squeegee, I draw the squeegee through paint, and then at a right angle, straight up and down, I start drawing these lines, which you can see in this painting titled Winter House. You can also see the texture in the painting, which I created by putting thick paint on the edge here and pulling it across the surface with a light touch, as opposed to pushing really hard, so that the paint is actually just laying on top, and that creates a really cool texture. The next painting that you see is titled immeasurability. So what I'm using for that particular painting is my ruined filbert technique. Now, if you're interested in learning more about the ruined filbert technique, I invite you to watch video 92, which is titled Using Layers to Create Depth and Interest in Your Work. But as you can see in this painting, Immeasurability, I have stippled all the way around to create the effect of texture and movement in line throughout the entire painting. And so what it also has done is, by doing this for many, many layers, for days and days and days, I got or the result is a really fine blending of color that creates like a veil that you can see beyond, in a very different way than the next painting I'm showing, which is titled Rear View Mirror. And in this painting, I used a combination of the squeegee and this is a synthetic brush. By the way, both of these are Princeton brushes, 6300 series. Really lovely synthetic, soft bristles, but not so soft that it's difficult to move the paint around. And so in this painting, Rear View Mirror, I went back and forth, back and forth, and back and forth many times for many days to create that solid, luminous color that you see. So how does this relate to composition? Well, it's the construction of color and shape and line, as you may recall. For me, those are the 3 of the 5 compositional elements that I'm most drawn to. Clearly, texture and value are present as well, but I find that what's really driving me is color, shape, and line. So there you go. You have 3 things that will hopefully help you develop your compositions more effectively, to break through blocks and struggles that you might have with any of the 5 visual elements of line, color, shape, value, and texture, and to understand how the size of your substrate and the tools that you're using are very integral ingredients in creating successful compositions. And I say successful because they would be successful if they truly express what your inner voice is trying to say in your work. So thanks so much for watching, and I will catch you next time.